The Andromeda galaxy is traveling toward us at over 400,000 kilometers per hour. In 4 billion years, it will collide with our Milky Way in a cosmic dance that will last millions of years. But what really exists at the center of this giant galaxy that's heading our way? Scientists have discovered that inside there's a supermassive black hole with the mass of 100 million suns, surrounded by billions of ancient stars that spin around it like a giant whirlpool. Every second that passes, this invisible monster swallows matter equivalent to entire planets. And the most impressive thing, around this violent center, there's a ring of stellar nurseries where thousands of new stars are born every year. How can such a destructive place also be a place of creation? What else is hidden in this galactic heart that will one day merge with ours? Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and comment from what part of the world you're watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. I notice there seems to be a confusion in your request. You've asked me to write about topic 1 from a list of topics, but what you've provided as the title and list of topics appears to be a clarification message rather than actual content topics. To help you properly, I need you to provide 1. An actual title for the essay. 2. The list of topics you want me to choose from. I'd be happy to write a 1,500-word informative essay in English once I have this information. Would you like me to write about one of these potential topics instead? Technology innovations in renewable energy, the history and impact of social media, advances in artificial intelligence, exploring cultural differences around the world, the science behind climate change. Please let me know which topic interests you, and I'll create the content according to your specifications with an engaging hook, conversational tone, and fully written out numbers and dates. Have you ever wondered how we went from simple text messages to a world where people share their entire lives online? Social media has fundamentally changed how we communicate, connect, and consume information. What started as basic digital forums has evolved into platforms that influence everything from personal relationships to global politics. The history of social media dates back further than many people realize. While we might think of Facebook and Twitter as the pioneers, the foundations were laid in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The earliest recognizable social media platform was probably 6 Degrees, launched in 1997. Named after the 6 degrees of separation theory, it allowed users to create profiles and connect with friends. Though primitive by today's standards, it established the basic blueprint that future platforms would follow. As internet access expanded in the early 2000s, new platforms emerged that began to shape what we now recognize as social media. Friendster launched in 2002 and quickly gained popularity, especially in Southeast Asia. It introduced the concept of the social circle, connecting with friends, then friends of friends, and so on. While Friendster eventually lost ground to competitors, it demonstrated the massive appetite for digital social connections. MySpace followed in 2003 and truly brought social media into the mainstream. For many people now in their 30s and 40s, MySpace was their first experience with social media. The platform revolutionized how individuals presented themselves online, allowing users to customize their profiles with music, backgrounds, and layouts. It also became a launching pad for musicians and artists, with bands like Arctic Monkeys and Lily Allen gaining fame initially through their MySpace presence. Then came the platform that would change everything. Facebook launched in 2004, initially restricted to Harvard students before expanding to other colleges and eventually opening to the general public in 2006. What set Facebook apart was its clean interface and real name policy, creating a sense of authenticity that previous platforms lacked. By 2008, it had surpassed MySpace in global popularity, and the social media landscape would never be the same. The evolution didn't stop there. Twitter arrived in 2006, introducing the concept of microblogging with its famous 140-character limit, later expanded to 280 characters in 2017. Instagram launched in 2010, focusing exclusively on photo sharing, while Snapchat appeared in 2011 with its revolutionary disappearing content feature. More recently, platforms like TikTok have transformed social media yet again, emphasizing short-form video content and utilizing powerful algorithms to deliver highly personalized content feeds. What started as a simple way to connect with friends has evolved into complex ecosystems that billions of people use daily. The impact of social media on society has been profound and multifaceted. Perhaps most obviously, it has transformed how we maintain relationships. Before social media, staying in touch with old classmates or distant family members required significant effort. Now, we can passively follow the lives of hundreds or even thousands of connections. Research shows the average Facebook user has around 338 friends, though they typically interact regularly with only a small percentage of those connections. This ability to maintain weak ties has benefits. Studies have shown that these extended networks can provide access to new information and opportunities that wouldn't be available through our closest connections alone. However, there are legitimate concerns about whether these digital connections have degraded the quality of our relationships. Many people report feeling socially connected yet simultaneously lonely, a paradox that researchers are still working to understand. The way we consume information has also been revolutionized by social media. Traditional gatekeepers of information like newspapers and television networks have been supplemented and sometimes supplanted by social platforms. Today, approximately 71% of Americans report getting at least some of their news from social media. This shift has democratized information sharing, allowing voices that might previously have been marginalized to reach wide audiences. However, this democratization comes with significant drawbacks. Without traditional editorial oversight, misinformation can spread rapidly. The structure of social media platforms, which often prioritize engagement over accuracy, can amplify sensational or emotionally triggering content. Studies have shown that false news spreads 6 times faster than true news on platforms like Twitter. This phenomenon has real-world consequences, from vaccine hesitancy to election interference. Social media has also fundamentally altered how businesses operate. Companies now spend over $40 billion annually on social media advertising in the United States alone. The targeting capabilities of platforms like Facebook allow advertisers to reach specific demographics with unprecedented precision. Meanwhile, the rise of influencer marketing has created entirely new business models, with some top influencers earning millions of dollars annually through sponsored content. For individuals, social media has created both opportunities and pressures. On one hand, platforms like LinkedIn have made professional networking more accessible than ever before. Artists, writers, and creators can build audiences without traditional gatekeepers. On the other hand, the constant pressure to present an idealized version of one's life has been linked to increased anxiety and depression, particularly among younger users. Speaking of younger users, the impact of social media on adolescents has become a major focus of research and concern. Teenagers today are the first generation to grow up with social media as an ever-present force in their lives. Studies have found concerning correlations between heavy social media use and mental health issues in this age group. Girls seem particularly vulnerable to negative effects related to body image and self-esteem. The relationship between social media and politics has also grown increasingly complex. These platforms have undoubtedly democratized political participation, allowing citizens to organize movements like the Arab Spring and Black Lives Matter with unprecedented speed and scale. However, they've also created echo chambers where like-minded people reinforce each other's views, potentially increasing political polarization. The economic model underlying most social media platforms, what Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism, has raised serious privacy concerns. These platforms collect vast amounts of data about users' behaviors, preferences, and connections, which they use to target advertising. While this data collection enables the free services we've come to rely on, many users remain unaware of just how extensive this surveillance is. Looking toward the future, social media continues to evolve rapidly. Virtual and augmented reality technologies promise to make digital social interactions more immersive. Facebook's rebranding to Meta in 2021 signals the company's bet on the metaverse, a more immersive, interconnected digital world. Meanwhile, concerns about privacy, mental health impacts, and misinformation are driving calls for increased regulation and platform accountability. Despite these challenges, it's worth remembering that social media is still relatively young. Facebook is less than 20 years old. TikTok is barely 6. We're still learning how to integrate these powerful tools into our societies in healthy ways. What's clear is that social media isn't going away. It's now firmly embedded in how billions of people connect, share, and understand their world. As we continue to navigate this digital landscape, developing media literacy and healthy usage habits becomes increasingly important. Understanding how algorithms shape what we see, being conscious of how social media affects our moods and relationships, and occasionally disconnecting completely are all strategies that can help us maintain control over these tools rather than being controlled by them. Speaking of maintaining control over technology rather than being controlled by it, artificial intelligence represents perhaps the most profound technological shift we're currently experiencing. The algorithms that power our social media feeds are just one application of AI that impacts our daily lives. But what exactly is artificial intelligence, and how is it transforming our world beyond the realm of social media? Artificial intelligence, at its core, refers to computer systems that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. These include recognizing patterns, learning from experience, making decisions, and understanding language. While popular culture often depicts AI as humanoid robots with consciousness, the reality of today's AI is both more mundane and more remarkable. The foundations of AI research date back to the 1950s, when computer scientists like Alan Turing began asking whether machines could think. The term artificial intelligence was officially coined in 1956 at the Dartmouth Conference, where researchers made optimistic predictions about creating machines with human-like intelligence within a generation. Those early predictions proved far too ambitious, and AI research experienced several winters, periods of reduced funding and interest when progress stalled. The current AI renaissance began around 2012, when researchers demonstrated dramatic improvements in an approach called deep learning. This technique, inspired loosely by how neurons work in the human brain, involves training neural networks on massive datasets to recognize patterns. A breakthrough moment came when a neural network called AlexNet dramatically outperformed previous systems in an image recognition competition. Since then, progress has accelerated at a breathtaking pace. Today's AI achievements would have seemed like science fiction just a decade ago. In 2016, Google's AlphaGo defeated the world champion of Go, a board game of profound complexity with more possible positions than there are atoms in the universe. In 2020, OpenAI released GPT-3, a language model that can write essays, compose poetry, and even generate computer code. These systems don't think in a human sense, but they can produce results that mimic human intelligence in specific domains. The impacts of these advances are already being felt across virtually every sector of the economy. In healthcare, AI systems can now detect certain cancers from medical images with accuracy that rivals or exceeds that of human radiologists. Machine learning algorithms analyze patient data to predict who might develop complications or respond best to particular treatments. These tools don't replace doctors but augment their capabilities, helping them make better informed decisions. Transportation is another area undergoing AI-driven transformation. While fully autonomous vehicles haven't yet become mainstream, driver assistance features powered by AI are now common in new cars. These include adaptive cruise control, lane-keeping assistance, and collision avoidance systems. Companies like Tesla, Waymo, and others continue to push toward full autonomy, though the technical and regulatory challenges remain significant. In the financial sector, AI algorithms now make millions of trading decisions each day, analyzing market trends at speeds impossible for human traders. Banks use machine learning to detect fraudulent transactions, identifying suspicious patterns across billions of data points. Insurance companies employ similar techniques to assess risk and process claims more efficiently. Manufacturing has embraced AI through robotics and process optimization. Modern industrial robots can learn tasks through demonstration rather than explicit programming. They use computer vision to identify and manipulate objects with increasing dexterity. Meanwhile, AI systems monitor production lines to predict when machines might fail, allowing for maintenance before costly breakdowns occur. Even creative fields aren't immune to AI disruption. AI systems can now generate original artwork, compose music, and write passable prose. Tools like DALL-E, Midjourney, and Stable Diffusion can create stunning images from text descriptions, while music composition AIs can produce original compositions in various styles. These creative AIs raise fascinating questions about the nature of creativity itself and whether it remains a uniquely human capability. The legal profession is seeing AI impact through document analysis tools that can review thousands of contracts or legal precedents in hours rather than the weeks it would take human lawyers. Similarly, AI is transforming customer service through increasingly sophisticated chatbots and virtual assistants that can handle routine inquiries, freeing human agents to address more complex issues. Perhaps most profound is how AI is changing scientific research itself. AI systems can now suggest hypotheses, design experiments, and analyze results in ways that accelerate discovery. In 2020, DeepMind's AlphaFold essentially solved the protein folding problem, predicting how proteins fold into three-dimensional structures. A breakthrough that promises to revolutionize drug discovery and our understanding of diseases. Despite these advances, current AI systems have significant limitations. They excel at pattern recognition but struggle with causal reasoning, understanding why things happen rather than just identifying correlations. They can be fooled in ways that humans wouldn't be, such as misidentifying images after subtle manipulations. And they learn from data that may contain human biases, sometimes amplifying those biases in their outputs. This last point highlights one of the major ethical concerns surrounding AI development. When AI systems are trained on data reflecting historical human biases, Whether around race, gender, or other characteristics, they can perpetuate and even amplify those biases. For example, facial recognition systems have demonstrated lower accuracy for women and people with darker skin tones. Similarly, resume screening algorithms trained on historical hiring data may disadvantage candidates from underrepresented groups if those groups were historically underrepresented. Privacy concerns also loom large in AI ethics discussions. Many AI systems require vast amounts of data to function effectively, raising questions about consent and ownership of personal information. Facial recognition technology, in particular, has sparked intense debate about surveillance and civil liberties. Some cities have banned government use of facial recognition, while others embrace it for law enforcement and security applications. The potential impact of AI on employment represents another major societal concern. While previous waves of automation primarily affected routine physical tasks, AI has the potential to automate cognitive tasks previously thought to be uniquely human. Economists debate whether AI will create more jobs than it displaces, as past technologies have generally done, or whether this time is different due to the breadth of capabilities AI can replicate. Looking further ahead, questions about artificial general intelligence (AGI) systems with human-level capability across a wide range of tasks spark both excitement and anxiety. While today's AI systems are narrow, excelling at specific tasks but unable to transfer learning across domains, many researchers believe AGI could eventually be achieved. This prospect raises profound questions about control, alignment with human values, and the potential risks of creating entities with capabilities exceeding our own. Governing AI development presents immense challenges. The technology evolves rapidly, crossing national boundaries and involving both public and private actors with diverse motivations. Regulatory approaches vary widely, with the European Union pursuing comprehensive AI regulations, while the United States has generally favored a lighter touch. Meanwhile, China has embraced AI development as a national priority, investing heavily while implementing its own regulatory framework. Despite these challenges, there's growing consensus about the need for responsible AI development. This includes ensuring systems are transparent, fair, privacy-preserving, and aligned with human values. Many leading AI researchers and companies have endorsed principles of responsible AI, though translating these principles into practice remains complex. For individuals navigating this AI-transformed landscape, developing AI literacy becomes increasingly important. Understanding the capabilities and limitations of AI systems helps us interact with them more effectively and maintain appropriate levels of trust. Just as we've had to develop media literacy for the age of social media, AI literacy will be crucial for citizens, workers, and consumers in the coming decades. The story of artificial intelligence is still being written, with the most profound impacts likely still ahead. Like previous transformative technologies, from electricity to the internet, AI will reshape how we work, communicate, and solve problems. By engaging thoughtfully with these developments, we can help steer AI toward beneficial uses while mitigating potential harms. The goal remains the same as with social media and other powerful technologies: to ensure these tools serve humanity's needs rather than the other way around. While technology continues to connect us in unprecedented ways, the human experience remains incredibly diverse across our planet. The digital tools we've been discussing have certainly made our world feel smaller, but they've also highlighted something fascinating. Despite our increased connectivity, profound cultural differences continue to shape how people live, communicate, and understand the world. These differences don't disappear when we connect online. Rather, they take on new dimensions in our global interactions. Have you ever wondered why a gesture considered friendly in one country might be deeply offensive in another, or why business meetings that would take 30 minutes in New York might unfold over several hours in Cairo? These variations aren't random. They reflect deep-seated cultural patterns that have evolved over centuries and continue to influence our daily lives, even as we become more interconnected. When we talk about culture, we're referring to the shared patterns of behaviors, values, and norms that characterize groups of people. Culture operates like an invisible software that programs how we interpret the world around us. Most fascinating is that we often don't recognize our own cultural programming until we encounter something different. It's like asking a fish to describe water. Difficult because it's so pervasive that it becomes invisible. One of the most immediately noticeable cultural differences involves communication styles. In countries like the United States, Canada, and Germany, communication tends to be direct. People generally say what they mean and value explicit verbal communication. The message is primarily in the words themselves. In contrast, many East Asian cultures, including Japan, China, and Korea, often emphasize indirect communication. Important information may be conveyed through context, nonverbal cues, or what remains unsaid. Neither approach is inherently better, but misunderstandings can easily arise when these different styles interact. Take Japan's concept of tatame and hon, the distinction between what one says publicly, tatami, and what one truly feels, hon. This separation helps maintain harmony in Japanese society, but can be puzzling to those from cultures that prioritize direct expression. Similarly, the Dutch directness that's considered honest and efficient at home might come across as blunt or even rude in cultures that prioritize saving face and maintaining harmony. Time orientation represents another fascinating cultural dimension. Some societies, particularly in Western Europe and North America, tend to be highly monochronic. They view time as linear with a clear past, present, and future. Schedules, punctuality, and deadlines are heavily emphasized. In contrast, many Mediterranean, Latin American, and Middle Eastern cultures have a more polychronic orientation. Time is viewed as flexible, with human relationships often taking precedence over arbitrary timetables. I once heard about an American businessman who became increasingly frustrated during a business trip to Brazil when meetings consistently started late and ran over schedule. From his cultural perspective, this represented disrespect and inefficiency. His Brazilian counterparts, meanwhile, were prioritizing relationship building and comprehensive discussion over rigid adherence to the clock, a perfectly rational approach within their cultural context. Personal space preferences also vary dramatically across cultures. In North America and Northern Europe, people typically maintain a larger physical distance during conversations, usually between 2 to 4 feet. In parts of the Middle East, Southern Europe, and Latin America, close physical proximity and touch are normal parts of communication. Neither is wrong, but the discomfort can be real when these expectations clash. A Middle Eastern person might perceive the Northern European as cold and distant, while the Northern European might feel their personal space is being invaded. Food practices perhaps most deliciously illustrate cultural differences. What constitutes a normal meal varies enormously around the world. An American might find the idea of eating raw horse meat, popular in Japan, unsettling, while many Hindus in India would be horrified at the American habit of eating beef. In some East Asian countries, slurping noodles indicates appreciation of the meal, while in most Western contexts, it would be considered poor table manners. These differences extend to when and how people eat. The French famously linger over meals, sometimes for hours, treating them as important social occasions. Americans often eat quickly, sometimes even in their cars, treating food more functionally. In Spain, dinner might not begin until 10 o'clock at night, a time when many Americans are preparing for bed. Perhaps most fundamental are differences in core values and beliefs. Dutch sociologist Geert Hofstede identified several key dimensions along which cultures differ, including individualism versus collectivism. Western societies, particularly the United States, tend to emphasize individual achievement, personal freedom, and self-reliance. Many Asian, African, and Latin American societies place greater emphasis on group harmony, family connections, and collective success. These differences manifest in countless ways, from parenting styles to workplace dynamics. American parents might encourage children to become independent early, praising them for self-sufficiency. Chinese parents might focus more on a child's obligations to family and academic achievement that brings honor to the collective. In the workplace, Americans might expect to be evaluated and rewarded based on individual performance, while Japanese employees might work toward group goals with less emphasis on standing out personally. Another key dimension involves attitudes toward hierarchy and authority. Some cultures, like those in Scandinavia, tend to be relatively egalitarian. Status differences exist but are downplayed, and even high-ranking individuals are expected to be accessible. Other societies, such as those in many parts of Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, accept larger power distances as natural. Clear hierarchies are respected, and deference to authority is expected. These differences play out in everything from how people address each other to office layouts. In Sweden, employees might call their CEO by their first name and feel comfortable challenging their ideas. In South Korea, elaborate honorifics mark status differences, and publicly questioning a superior would be highly unusual. Religious practices and beliefs also profoundly shape cultural differences. In highly secular societies like the Czech Republic or Sweden, religion plays a minimal role in public life. In contrast, countries like Saudi Arabia or India have religious principles deeply woven into daily practices, laws, and social expectations. Even the concept of what constitutes appropriate weekend leisure varies. In Israel, the weekend falls on Friday and Saturday. In Saudi Arabia, it recently shifted from Thursday-Friday to Friday-Saturday, while in most Western countries, it's Saturday-Sunday. Gender roles and expectations represent another area of significant cultural variation. While gender equality has become an increasingly shared value globally, the pace and manifestation of change differ dramatically. In Iceland, widely considered the world's most gender-equal society, policies strongly support shared parenting and women's workplace participation. In countries like Yemen or Pakistan, women's roles remain much more circumscribed, with significant restrictions on their public participation. These cultural differences can lead to serious misunderstandings in our interconnected world. A classic example involves the simple act of nodding one's head. In most Western cultures, nodding means yes or agreement. In Bulgaria and parts of Greece, however, nodding up and down actually signifies no, while shaking the head side to side means yes, exactly opposite to the Western convention. Such reversed signals can cause confusion that ranges from humorous to consequential. Business contexts often highlight these challenges. American executives might value contracts as comprehensive legal documents that explicitly state all obligations. Chinese business leaders might view them more as general frameworks, with the relationship between parties being more important than the written details. Neither is wrong, but friction arises when these different expectations meet. Given these differences, developing cultural intelligence, the ability to relate effectively across cultures, has become an essential skill. This doesn't mean memorizing an encyclopedia of cultural practices. Rather, it involves developing awareness of one's own cultural assumptions, curiosity about differences, and adaptability in cross-cultural situations. Small adjustments can make significant differences in cross-cultural interactions. Speaking more slowly, not louder. When there's a language barrier, being attuned to non-verbal cues and avoiding idioms that don't translate well all help bridge cultural gaps. Most importantly, approaching differences with curiosity rather than judgment creates space for genuine connection. Despite these differences, it's important to avoid overgeneralizing. Cultures aren't monolithic, and individual variation exists within every society. A Japanese person might be more direct than the cultural stereotype suggests, while an American might be more relationship-focused than their cultural norm. Additionally, cultures aren't static. They evolve continuously through internal change and external influences. Globalization has accelerated cultural exchange, creating fascinating hybrid forms. Korean pop music draws on American hip-hop traditions but transforms them into something distinctly new. Bollywood films incorporate Hollywood techniques while maintaining uniquely Indian storytelling approaches. Cuisine perhaps shows this hybridization most clearly. The popularity of sushi in Brazil, Mexican food in Japan, or Indian curry in Britain demonstrates how cultural elements travel and transform. While these exchanges create exciting new forms, they've also sparked concerns about cultural homogenization. As powerful global brands and media spread Western consumer culture, some fear the loss of traditional practices and indigenous knowledge. In response, many communities are actively working to preserve their cultural heritage, documenting endangered languages, teaching traditional crafts to younger generations, and celebrating distinct cultural practices. What's emerging isn't a single global culture, but rather a complex landscape where global and local elements interact. Young people in particular often navigate multiple cultural contexts, perhaps speaking their indigenous language at home, the national language at school, and English online, all while consuming both global and local media. These third culture experiences create new possibilities for cultural innovation and understanding. As our world continues to connect through technology and travel, appreciating cultural differences becomes not just personally enriching but practically essential. The most successful global organizations recognize that cultural intelligence is as important as technical skill. The most effective diplomacy acknowledges and respects cultural differences rather than assuming universal norms. And for individuals, developing cultural agility enhances both professional opportunities and personal growth. Cultural differences in how societies relate to their environments also shape how communities around the world perceive and respond to what may be humanity's greatest shared challenge: climate change. While local traditions and values influence these responses, the underlying science of climate change transcends cultural boundaries, affecting people everywhere regardless of their cultural context. But what exactly is happening to our planet's climate, and how confident are scientists about these changes? Have you ever wondered why we keep hearing that the Earth is warming when you might still experience cold winters or even record-breaking snowstorms? The distinction between weather and climate is crucial to understanding this apparent contradiction. Weather refers to the conditions we experience in a specific place over hours or days, while climate describes long-term patterns over decades or longer. A single cold day doesn't contradict global warming any more than a single person living to 100 years old disproves average human lifespans. The evidence for climate change comes from multiple independent lines of research, creating a compelling scientific picture. Global temperature records show that Earth's average surface temperature has increased by approximately 1.1 degrees Celsius since the pre-industrial era. This might sound small, but it represents an enormous amount of heat when spread across the entire planet. The past 8 years have been the warmest on record, with 2020 and 2016 virtually tied as the hottest years since modern record-keeping began in the 1880s. Beyond rising temperatures, scientists observe other clear signals of a changing climate. Sea levels have risen about 8 to 9 inches since 1880, with the rate accelerating in recent decades to about 1.4 inches per decade. Mountain glaciers are retreating worldwide, with some iconic glaciers in places like Glacier National Park in Montana having lost more than 80% of their area since 1966. Arctic sea ice is declining at a rate of about 13% per decade, opening up previously ice-covered waters and changing habitats for wildlife and indigenous communities. Weather patterns are changing too, with many regions experiencing more intense rainfall events interspersed with longer dry periods. The frequency of extreme heat events has increased across most land areas. In Australia, for example, the number of record hot days has doubled since the 1960s, while record cold days have decreased. So what's causing these changes? To understand that, we need to look at something called the greenhouse effect, which is actually a natural and necessary process. Certain gases in our atmosphere, including carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor, trap heat from the sun that would otherwise escape into space. Without this natural greenhouse effect, Earth would be too cold for life as we know it, about 33 degrees Celsius colder on average. The problem isn't the greenhouse effect itself, but rather that human activities are enhancing it by adding more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. When we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas, we release carbon dioxide that had been locked away underground for millions of years. Deforestation reduces the number of trees that absorb carbon dioxide. Agricultural practices, particularly raising livestock and growing rice, produce methane. Industrial processes create other potent greenhouse gases like nitrous oxide and fluorinated gases. The evidence connecting human activities to observed warming is overwhelming. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere have increased by nearly 50% since pre-industrial times, from about 280 parts per million to over 415 parts per million today. Scientists can actually identify the carbon dioxide from fossil fuels because it has a different isotopic signature than naturally occurring carbon dioxide. Multiple lines of evidence, including satellite measurements, confirm that this added carbon dioxide is trapping more heat in the Earth system. Computer models of the climate system provide another important line of evidence. These sophisticated programs incorporate our understanding of atmospheric physics, ocean circulation, ice dynamics, and many other factors. When scientists run these models with only natural factors like volcanic eruptions and solar variations, they cannot reproduce the observed warming. Only when human factors are included do the models match what we're actually observing. This scientific understanding didn't develop overnight. As early as 1896, Swedish scientist Svante Arrhenius calculated that doubling atmospheric carbon dioxide would significantly warm the Earth. By the 1950s, more detailed measurements confirmed rising carbon dioxide levels. In 1979, a report from the U.S. National Academy of Sciences warned of significant warming if carbon dioxide continued to increase. Since then, thousands of studies published in peer-reviewed scientific journals have refined and strengthened this understanding. Today, there's overwhelming scientific consensus about human-caused climate change. Multiple studies show that more than 97% of actively publishing climate scientists agree that human activities are warming the planet. Every major scientific organization worldwide has endorsed this position. This doesn't mean scientists agree on every detail. There are ongoing debates about the precise sensitivity of the climate system and regional impacts. But the fundamental understanding that humans are causing global warming is not seriously disputed among experts. What might surprise many people is that climate scientists have been remarkably accurate in their projections. Models from the 1970s and 80s correctly predicted the approximate amount of warming we've experienced, despite having much simpler computers and less data than today. This successful track record gives scientists confidence in projections about future warming. Those projections suggest that without significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, global temperatures could rise by an additional 1.5 to 4.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. The wide range reflects uncertainty about both future emissions and exactly how sensitive the climate system is to those emissions. Even at the lower end, this additional warming would likely have serious consequences. Rising sea levels present one of the clearest threats. Higher temperatures cause ocean water to expand and ice sheets to melt, particularly in Greenland and Antarctica. Current projections suggest sea levels could rise by 1 to 8 feet by 2100, threatening coastal cities and small island nations. Over longer time frames, continued warming could eventually lead to much larger increases, potentially reshaping coastlines worldwide. Changes in precipitation patterns will likely intensify, with already wet regions generally getting wetter and dry regions becoming drier. More moisture in a warmer atmosphere means heavier downpours when it does rain, increasing flood risks. At the same time, faster evaporation during warm periods can worsen droughts. Extreme weather events are expected to become more frequent and intense in many regions. Heat waves will likely become more common and severe, posing health risks, especially for vulnerable populations like the elderly. While the connection between climate change and hurricanes is complex, warmer ocean temperatures provide more energy for storms, potentially increasing their intensity. Ecosystems worldwide are already responding to climate change, with shifts in the timing of seasonal events like flowering and migration. As temperatures continue to rise, many species will need to move to stay within their preferred climate conditions. Some won't be able to move quickly enough or will find their path blocked by human development, increasing extinction risks. Marine ecosystems face the additional threat of ocean acidification, caused by the same carbon dioxide emissions driving warming. Agriculture will face mixed impacts, with some northern regions potentially benefiting from longer growing seasons, but many others, particularly in tropical and subtropical areas, facing challenges from heat stress and changing rainfall patterns. Even in regions where overall growing conditions might improve, increased weather variability and extreme events could disrupt food production. Human health will be affected through multiple pathways. More frequent and intense heat waves will increase heat-related illnesses and deaths. Changing climate conditions may allow disease-carrying insects like mosquitoes to expand their ranges. Air quality could worsen in many regions as higher temperatures accelerate the formation of ground-level ozone, a key component of smog. The economic costs of these impacts could be substantial. A report by the Global Commission on Adaptation estimated that investing $1.8 trillion in adaptation measures from 2020 to 2030 could generate $7.1 trillion in total benefits. Meanwhile, One study, published in the journal Nature, suggested that achieving the Paris Agreement goal of limiting warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius could prevent tens of trillions of dollars in economic damages by the end of the century. It's important to recognize that these impacts won't be distributed equally. Generally, developing countries that have contributed least to greenhouse gas emissions face the greatest risks, often due to geographic location and limited resources for adaptation. This inequality raises important questions about climate justice and responsibility. Despite these sobering projections, there's room for cautious optimism. We understand the problem and have many of the technological solutions needed to address it. Renewable energy costs have fallen dramatically, with solar photovoltaic prices dropping by about 90% since 2009. Wind power, energy storage, and electric vehicles are following similar cost reduction trajectories. These technologies are increasingly competitive with fossil fuels even without considering climate benefits. Political momentum is also building, albeit slowly. The 2015 Paris Agreement established a global framework for reducing emissions, with countries submitting increasingly ambitious climate plans. Many governments, companies, and investors are now committing to net zero emissions targets, meaning they plan to reduce emissions as much as possible and offset any remaining emissions. The science of climate change continues to advance, with researchers working to refine projections and better understand regional impacts. New satellite missions and ground-based monitoring networks provide increasingly detailed data about the Earth system. Advanced computer models incorporate more processes and higher resolution, improving our ability to project future changes, especially at regional scales. Understanding the science behind climate change helps us make informed decisions about both reducing emissions and preparing for the changes already underway. While the challenge is significant, human ingenuity and cooperation have solved difficult problems before. By recognizing both the seriousness of climate change and our capacity to address it, we can approach this challenge with the urgency it deserves while maintaining hope for a sustainable future. The capacity to address climate change leads us directly to one of the most exciting areas of technological innovation today: renewable energy. While understanding the science of our changing climate is crucial, equally important is developing and implementing the practical solutions that can help us transition to a more sustainable energy system. The rapid evolution of these technologies is not just a response to environmental concerns, but also represents one of the most significant economic opportunities of our time. Historically, human societies have gone through several major energy transitions. For most of human history, biomass, mainly wood, provided our primary energy source. The Industrial Revolution brought coal to the forefront in the 19th century, followed by oil and natural gas becoming dominant in the 20th century. Each transition delivered energy that was more convenient, more energy-dense, and eventually cheaper than what came before. Today, we're in the early stages of another major energy transition, this time toward renewable sources like solar, wind, and others that harness natural processes without depleting finite resources. Solar power has undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. The technology has roots going back to 1839, when French physicist Alexandre Edmond Becquerel first observed the photovoltaic effect, the process by which certain materials generate an electric current when exposed to light. Early solar cells were incredibly inefficient and prohibitively expensive, used primarily for specialized applications like powering satellites. As recently as 2010, solar power was still widely considered too expensive for mainstream adoption. What happened next surprised even industry experts. Solar panel costs plummeted by roughly 90% in just a decade. making solar not just competitive with fossil fuels in many regions, but often the cheapest source of new electricity generation. This price decline resulted from a virtuous cycle of technological improvements, manufacturing scale, and supportive policies. Modern solar panels convert between 18 and 22% of sunlight into electricity, with advanced lab designs approaching 30%, and can last 25 to 30 years with minimal maintenance. The growth has been staggering. Global solar capacity increased from about 40 gigawatts in 2010 to over 700 gigawatts by 2020. Countries like China, the United States, Japan, and Germany lead in total installed capacity, but solar is increasingly being deployed worldwide, from utility-scale projects covering hundreds of acres to rooftop systems on homes and businesses. Wind power has followed a similar trajectory, though with different technical challenges and opportunities. Humans have harnessed wind energy for thousands of years through sailboats and windmills, but modern wind turbines represent a dramatic leap in technology. Today's utility-scale turbines stand up to 300 feet tall with blades nearly as long as football fields, capable of powering thousands of homes each. Like solar, wind power costs have fallen dramatically, by about 70% since 2009. Wind now supplies around 6% of global electricity and considerably more in certain regions. Denmark, for instance, gets nearly half its electricity from wind on an annual basis. Offshore wind, while more expensive to build, offers particular promise because winds tend to be stronger and more consistent over water, and turbines can be built even larger without land use constraints. Hydropower remains the largest renewable electricity source globally, providing about 16% of the world's electricity. While large dam projects have slowed in many regions due to environmental and social concerns, technologies like run-of-river hydropower and modernizing existing dams continue to advance. Small-scale hydro projects can provide reliable power with minimal environmental impact, especially important for remote communities. Geothermal energy taps into the Earth's internal heat, providing both electricity and direct heating in volcanically active regions like Iceland, where it meets about 25% of the country's electricity needs and heats about 90% of buildings. Enhanced geothermal systems are expanding the potential of this technology to regions without naturally occurring hot springs or geysers. Biomass energy, derived from plant and animal materials, has evolved far beyond simply burning wood. Modern bioenergy includes liquid biofuels for transportation, biogas from decomposing organic matter, and efficient wood pellet systems for heating. While questions remain about the sustainable scale of bioenergy given land constraints, it offers valuable versatility, especially for applications where direct electrification is challenging. Ocean energy technologies aim to capture the power of waves, tides, ocean currents, and temperature differences in seawater. Though still largely in developmental stages, these technologies could eventually provide significant power, particularly for coastal communities. What makes the renewable energy transition particularly powerful is how these different sources complement each other. Solar produces most during sunny days, wind often peaks at night and during stormy weather, hydropower can be highly controllable, and geothermal provides constant baseload power. This complementarity, combined with increasingly affordable energy storage, helps address the variability that has historically been seen as renewable energy's greatest limitation. Energy storage technologies have become crucial enablers of the renewable transition. Lithium-ion batteries, the same technology powering smartphones and laptops, have seen price drops of nearly 85% since 2010. Grid-scale battery installations are increasingly common, capable of storing excess renewable energy when production is high and releasing it when needed. Other storage approaches include pumped hydroelectric storage, pumping water uphill when electricity is abundant and releasing it through turbines when needed, compressed air storage, and emerging technologies like flow batteries designed specifically for grid applications. Hydrogen is generating particular excitement as both a storage medium and a versatile energy carrier. When produced using renewable electricity to split water molecules, so-called green hydrogen, it can serve as seasonal energy storage, fuel for transportation, heat source for industry, or feedstock for chemical manufacturing. While currently expensive, green hydrogen production costs are expected to fall dramatically as renewable electricity becomes cheaper and electrolyzer technologies improve. The transportation sector, which has historically been almost entirely dependent on petroleum, is in the early stages of its own transformation. Electric vehicles are the most visible example, with global sales growing by about 40% annually in recent years. As battery costs continue to fall and charging infrastructure expands, many analysts expect electric vehicles to reach price parity with conventional vehicles in most markets by the mid-2020s. Major automakers have announced plans to phase out production of internal combustion engine vehicles, with timeframes ranging from 2025 to 2040. For applications where batteries remain challenging, such as long-haul aviation and shipping, sustainable liquid fuels will likely play an important role. These include advanced biofuels and synthetic fuels produced using captured carbon dioxide and renewable electricity. Buildings represent another major energy-consuming sector undergoing transformation. Improved insulation, advanced window technologies, and smart control systems can dramatically reduce energy needs for heating and cooling. Heat pumps, essentially air conditioners that can run in reverse, can provide highly efficient heating and cooling using electricity rather than direct fossil fuel combustion. When combined with on-site renewable generation like rooftop solar, buildings can approach or even achieve net zero energy status. Industrial processes that have traditionally relied on fossil fuels for high-temperature heat are exploring alternatives like concentrated solar thermal, electric heating, biomass, and hydrogen. Materials manufacturing is becoming more efficient while also exploring substitutions, for example, using sustainable wood products in place of energy-intensive concrete and steel in construction where appropriate. The economic implications of the renewable energy transition extend far beyond just changing how we generate electricity. The renewable energy sector already employs over 11 million people globally, with job growth outpacing many other industries. These jobs span manufacturing, installation, operations and maintenance, research and financing. While fossil fuel industries will continue to see employment decline, the net effect on employment appears positive, though with significant geographic and sectoral shifts requiring thoughtful policy responses. Investment patterns are shifting dramatically. Many major financial institutions are reducing or eliminating funding for new fossil fuel projects while increasing investments in clean energy. Global investment in renewable energy has averaged around $300 billion annually in recent years, with additional hundreds of billions going to related technologies like electric vehicles and energy efficiency. Still, analysis from the International Energy Agency suggests investment needs to roughly triple to put the world on track for net zero emissions by mid-century. The transition faces real challenges. Integrating large amounts of variable renewable energy requires modernizing electricity grids with more flexible transmission, advanced forecasting systems, and updated market designs that properly value services like rapid response and storage. Some renewable technologies still rely on minerals and materials with their own supply chain and environmental considerations. And the global nature of climate change means that solutions must work not just in wealthy countries, but across diverse economic and political contexts. The pace of the renewable transition also remains a critical question. While the technology and economics are increasingly favorable, policy and societal choices significantly influence adoption rates. Some countries have committed to decarbonizing their electricity systems by 2035 or 2040, while others continue to build new fossil fuel infrastructure designed to operate for decades. These decisions made in the next 5 to 10 years will largely determine whether global temperature targets remain achievable. What's clear is that the transition to renewable energy is no longer primarily a question of technological feasibility or even economic competitiveness. Rather, it's increasingly about how quickly we can deploy already viable solutions at the massive scale required. The renewable energy revolution represents one of the most profound technological and economic shifts in human history, comparable to the spread of electricity itself or the digital revolution, and its acceleration may well determine whether we can maintain a stable climate system while meeting humanity's growing energy needs. As we work to transform our energy systems, another crucial area undergoing innovation involves something even more fundamental to human life: our food systems. The way we produce, distribute, and consume food connects directly to our broader energy and climate challenges, accounting for approximately 1/4 of global greenhouse gas emissions. Yet food systems face additional pressures beyond just energy use. They must provide nutrition for a growing population while preserving biodiversity, adapting to changing climates, and supporting farmer livelihoods. This complex balancing act is driving remarkable innovations in how we grow, move, and think about food. Have you ever wondered why, in a world that produces enough food to feed everyone, nearly 800 million people still go hungry while another 2 billion are overweight or obese? Or how we'll feed nearly 10 billion people by 2050 without destroying the natural systems we depend on? These paradoxes reflect the profound challenges of our current food systems, which have achieved incredible productivity but with significant unintended consequences. Modern agriculture represents one of humanity's greatest achievements. Over the past century, crop yields have increased dramatically. Wheat yields, for example, have tripled or quadrupled in many regions since 1950. This productivity revolution, often called the Green Revolution, combined improved crop varieties with synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation, and mechanization. It helped avert widespread famine predictions and reduce the percentage of chronically hungry people worldwide despite rapid population growth. However, this productivity has come with significant costs. Agriculture now uses about 38% of Earth's ice-free land surface and 70% of freshwater withdrawals. Fertilizer runoff creates massive dead zones in coastal waters, while pesticides can harm beneficial insects like pollinators. Soil erosion occurs much faster than natural processes can replace it in many farming regions, with some estimates suggesting we have fewer than 60 harvests left if current degradation rates continue. Meanwhile, agriculture contributes about 10 to 12% of global greenhouse gas emissions directly, with additional emissions from land clearing, food processing, and transportation. These challenges have sparked a wave of innovation in farming practices designed to maintain productivity while reducing environmental impacts. Precision agriculture uses sensors, satellites, drones, and data analytics to apply exactly the right amount of water, fertilizer, and pesticides exactly where needed. Rather than treating an entire field uniformly, farmers can now manage at a much finer scale, often down to individual plants. Studies show this approach can reduce fertilizer and pesticide use by 20 to 40% while maintaining or even increasing yields. Soil health has moved from a niche concern to a central focus of agricultural innovation. Practices like no-till farming, planting without plowing, cover cropping, growing plants specifically to protect and nourish soil between main crops, and diversified crop rotations help build soil organic matter. This not only reduces erosion, but also sequesters carbon, improves water retention, and can eventually reduce fertilizer needs. Major food companies are increasingly supporting these regenerative agriculture practices through financial incentives and technical assistance for farmers. Controlled environment agriculture, including greenhouses, vertical farms, and indoor facilities with artificial lighting, allows year-round production regardless of outdoor conditions. These systems can produce up to 10 times more food per acre than conventional farming, while using up to 95% less water through recirculating systems. In countries like the Netherlands, high-tech greenhouses achieve remarkable productivity while minimizing environmental impacts. One Dutch tomato grower produces about 140,000 pounds of tomatoes per acre using just 1 gallon of water per pound, approximately 1/10 the water used in open-field tomato production. Genetic tools offer another innovation pathway, though one that generates considerable debate. Traditional breeding has been enhanced by molecular techniques that allow breeders to identify promising genetic combinations more quickly. Gene editing tools like CRISPR can make precise changes to plant genomes without introducing foreign genes. Applications include developing crops that better resist pests and diseases, tolerate drought and heat, use nutrients more efficiently, or provide enhanced nutrition. The regulatory approach to these technologies varies widely, with some regions embracing them as extensions of traditional breeding, while others apply stricter oversight. Livestock production faces particularly intense sustainability challenges, as animal agriculture generates about 14.5% of human-caused greenhouse gas emissions, uses large land areas for grazing and feed production, and raises animal welfare concerns in intensive systems. Innovations here include improved breeding and feed formulations that reduce methane emissions from cattle, integrated crop livestock systems that recycle nutrients more effectively, and advanced monitoring systems that detect health issues early and reduce antibiotic use. Alternative protein sources represent one of the fastest-growing food innovation areas. Plant-based meat alternatives have improved dramatically in taste and texture, with products now available in mainstream supermarkets and fast food chains. Companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods have developed plant products that mimic the cooking experience, flavor, and mouthfeel of conventional meat using ingredients like pea protein, coconut oil, and soy legumoglobin. Meanwhile, cultivated meat, sometimes called lab-grown or cell-based meat, produces animal tissue from cells grown in bioreactors, potentially offering real animal meat without the environmental footprint or ethical concerns of conventional production. While still in early commercial stages and facing cost challenges, companies have progressed from burgers costing hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce in 2013 to targeting competitive pricing within this decade. Beyond production, our food distribution systems require significant innovation. Approximately 1/3 of all food produced globally goes uneaten, about 1.3 billion tons annually. In developing regions, most loss occurs during production, handling, and storage, often due to inadequate infrastructure. Simple technologies like improved storage bags, small-scale solar dryers, and better cold chain management can dramatically reduce these losses. In developed countries, waste occurs primarily at retail and consumer levels. Digital platforms now connect food retailers with local charities to redistribute surplus food before it spoils. Apps allow consumers to purchase discounted food approaching its sell-by date. Packaging innovations extend shelf life while reducing environmental impact through compostable or recyclable materials. Ugly produce subscription services have created markets for cosmetically imperfect fruits and vegetables that would otherwise be discarded despite being perfectly nutritious. Urban food systems are evolving rapidly as cities recognize their vulnerability to supply chain disruptions. Urban agriculture has moved beyond community gardens to include commercial rooftop farms, converted warehouses, and even underground facilities in repurposed spaces like old bomb shelters. While urban production can't replace rural agriculture, it can improve fresh food access in underserved neighborhoods while reducing transportation emissions and creating local jobs. Food distribution networks are becoming more regional and resilient. Food hubs aggregate products from multiple small and medium-sized farms, handling logistics and marketing that would overwhelm individual producers. Community-supported agriculture, CSA programs and farmers' markets create direct connections between producers and consumers. These shorter supply chains typically return a higher percentage of food dollars to farmers while reducing transportation emissions. Consumer preferences and behaviors represent perhaps the most powerful force reshaping food systems. Demand for organic products has grown consistently at about 5 to 10% annually for decades, moving from niche health stores to mainstream supermarkets. Interest in locally produced food, transparency about production methods, and ethical sourcing continues to expand. While price and convenience remain primary purchase drivers for most consumers, values-based considerations increasingly influence food choices. Digital technologies are transforming the consumer food experience. Smartphone apps provide instant information about product ingredients, sourcing, and environmental impact simply by scanning barcodes. Online grocery shopping, accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, allows more precise purchasing that can reduce impulse buying and associated waste. Meal kit services, despite packaging concerns, often incorporate precise portioning that reduces food waste compared to traditional shopping. Institutional food purchasing by schools, hospitals, corporate cafeterias, and government facilities increasingly incorporates sustainability criteria. These large volume purchases can drive significant change through their buying power. For example, the Good Food Purchasing Program in the United States guides public institutions toward food that meets standards for local economic impact, environmental sustainability, worker welfare, animal welfare, and nutrition. Policy innovations complement these market-driven changes. Farm subsidies, historically focused primarily on production volume, are being redesigned in some regions to reward environmental services like carbon sequestration and biodiversity protection. Public procurement policies increasingly support sustainable and local food systems. Improved food labeling helps consumers make informed choices, while food waste bans in places like France and South Korea redirect surplus food to people in need or to composting rather than landfills. Dietary guidance is evolving to incorporate sustainability alongside nutrition. Countries including Brazil, Sweden, and Germany have integrated environmental considerations into their national dietary guidelines, generally recommending more plant-based foods and fewer animal products, particularly from intensive production systems. These guidelines recognize that healthy diets and environmentally sustainable diets largely overlap. though cultural considerations and local contexts remain important. Education initiatives aim to reconnect people with their food systems. School garden programs teach children where food comes from and build skills for healthier eating. Cooking classes help address the decline in home cooking skills that has accompanied busy modern lifestyles. Farm tours and agricultural education programs build public understanding of farming challenges and opportunities. The transformation of food systems represents one of our greatest challenges, but also one of our greatest opportunities to address multiple interconnected issues simultaneously. Unlike some global challenges that require primarily technological solutions, food system transformation involves technological, social, economic, and cultural dimensions working together. The innovations occurring across the food chain demonstrate how creative human solutions can address seemingly intractable problems when approached from multiple angles. By rethinking how we produce, distribute, and consume one of our most basic needs, we create possibilities for healthier people and a healthier planet. These innovations in food systems are reshaping not just what we eat, but also the very environments where most of us live. The places we call home, our cities and communities, are undergoing their own remarkable transformation. With over 55% of the global population already living in urban areas, a figure expected to rise to nearly 70% by 2050, how we design, build, and manage our cities has profound implications for both human well-being and planetary health. This urban revolution represents perhaps the greatest opportunity to create more sustainable, resilient, and livable communities for billions of people. Have you ever wondered why some neighborhoods feel vibrant and welcoming while others seem sterile and unwelcoming? Or why traffic congestion persists despite constantly expanding roads? The answers lie in the fundamental principles of urban planning and design, disciplines that are being revolutionized as cities face unprecedented challenges from climate change, population growth, and changing lifestyles. For most of the 20th century, urban development in many parts of the world followed a car-centric model. Cities expanded outward through low-density suburbs, with rigid separation between residential, commercial, and industrial areas. This approach, known as single-use zoning, seemed logical at the time. Keep polluting factories away from homes, create quiet residential neighborhoods, and build wide roads for increasing automobile traffic. The result was sprawling metropolitan regions where daily life required driving everywhere, community bonds often weakened, and infrastructure costs ballooned. Today, urban planners and city leaders are embracing a fundamentally different approach often called the 15-minute city or complete neighborhoods. This concept, pioneered in places like Paris, Barcelona, and Portland, aims to create communities where most daily needs, grocery shopping, schools, healthcare, work, recreation, can be reached within a 15-minute walk or bike ride. This doesn't mean eliminating cars entirely, but rather creating genuine transportation choices so that driving becomes optional rather than mandatory for everyday activities. The benefits of this approach extend far beyond just convenience. Research shows that walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods support greater physical activity, reducing risks of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. Mental health improves when people have more spontaneous social interactions with neighbors. Local economies benefit when people shop at nearby businesses rather than distant malls. And from an environmental perspective, compact development can reduce carbon emissions from transportation by 40 to 60% compared to sprawling suburbs. Creating these human-scale communities requires rethinking street design. The traditional approach prioritized moving as many cars as quickly as possible through an area. Modern, complete streets balance the needs of all users, adding protected bike lanes, wider sidewalks, and dedicated transit lanes, while often reducing space for private vehicles. Cities like Copenhagen, where over 60% of residents commute by bicycle, demonstrate how this rebalancing creates safer, more pleasant urban environments. When New York City converted parts of Broadway into pedestrian plazas, not only did pedestrian injuries decrease by 35%, but retail sales for nearby businesses increased by up to 71%. Public transportation undergoes similar reinvention in forward-thinking cities. Rather than viewing transit as merely a bare-bones service for those without cars, cities like Vienna and Singapore have created integrated systems that attract riders from all socioeconomic backgrounds. The key elements include frequent service, typically every 10 minutes or less on major routes, comfortable vehicles and stations, real-time information systems, and seamless connections between different transit modes. When designed this way, public transportation becomes not just an alternative but often the preferred choice for urban mobility. The physical infrastructure of cities is also becoming smarter and more responsive through digital technologies. Smart traffic signals adjust timing based on actual conditions rather than fixed schedules, reducing congestion and emissions. Sensors monitor water systems to detect leaks before they become major problems. Energy grids incorporate distributed renewable generation and storage to improve resilience. Public lighting adjusts based on actual usage patterns, saving energy while maintaining safety. Perhaps most visible is how cities are reclaiming space previously dedicated to cars. Seoul, South Korea, famously removed an elevated highway to restore the Cheonggyecheon stream, creating a linear park that now attracts more than 60,000 visitors daily. Madrid converted its central business district into a largely car-free zone, improving air quality and revitalizing street life. Paris is removing 70,000 parking spaces to create more room for walking, cycling, and greenery. These transformations demonstrate that cities can become more livable and economically vibrant while reducing car dependence. Green infrastructure represents another fundamental shift in urban design. Rather than treating nature as something that exists only outside the city, planners increasingly integrate natural systems into the urban fabric. Bioswales and rain gardens absorb stormwater, reducing flooding while filtering pollutants. Green roofs insulate buildings, support biodiversity, and reduce the urban heat island effect that makes cities significantly warmer than surrounding areas. Urban forests provide shade, improve air quality, and create habitat corridors for wildlife. Singapore exemplifies this approach through its city in a garden vision. Despite being one of the world's most densely populated countries, Singapore has increased its green cover from 36% to nearly 50% since the 1980s. Its policies require developers to replace any greenery lost to construction, often by incorporating it into building designs. The result includes spectacular examples like the Super Tree Grove at Gardens by the Bay, vertical gardens reaching up to 16 stories high that collect rainwater, generate solar power, and provide habitat for thousands of plants. Housing represents perhaps the most challenging aspect of urban sustainability. Many cities face severe affordability crises, with housing costs consuming unsustainable portions of household incomes. Innovative approaches include Vienna's social housing model, where 60% of residents live in subsidized housing designed to create socio-economically diverse communities. Tokyo's flexible zoning allows continuous adaptation of the housing supply to meet changing needs. Meanwhile, technical innovations like mass timber construction and modular building systems reduce both costs and environmental impacts of new housing. Urban resilience, the capacity to withstand and recover from shocks, has become a central concern as climate change increases the frequency and severity of extreme weather events. Rotterdam, much of which lies below sea level, has become a global leader in climate adaptation through its sponge city approach. Rather than relying solely on traditional flood defenses, Rotterdam incorporates water plazas that serve as recreational spaces during dry weather but can store excess rainwater during storms. Green roofs, permeable pavements, and restored urban wetlands further enhance the city's capacity to manage water. Social sustainability matters as much as environmental and economic aspects. Truly successful cities create inclusive communities where people of different backgrounds, incomes, and abilities can thrive together. Barcelona's Superblocks initiative creates car-light neighborhoods where streets become community spaces for play, socializing, and local commerce. Colombia's Medellin transformed from one of the world's most dangerous cities to an urban innovation leader, partly through investments in public spaces and transportation that physically and socially connected previously isolated low-income neighborhoods to the broader city. Digital connectivity now forms an essential part of urban infrastructure, but cities approach this differently. Some pursue comprehensive smart city initiatives deploying thousands of sensors and centralized data platforms. Others focus on open data and citizen engagement, providing tools for communities to develop their own solutions to local challenges. Questions of privacy, surveillance, and who controls urban data remain contentious, with growing emphasis on ethical frameworks that protect residents while enabling innovation. Food systems integration into urban planning has progressed beyond the urban agriculture mentioned earlier. Cities like Detroit are updating zoning codes to accommodate commercial urban farming. Toronto requires new large residential developments to include space for growing food. Meanwhile, food policy councils in cities worldwide coordinate efforts to reduce food insecurity, support local food economies, and reduce the environmental footprint of urban food systems. Governance innovations enable these physical transformations. Participatory budgeting, pioneered in Porto Alegre, Brazil, allows residents direct input into spending priorities. Barcelona's digital democracy platform enables continuous citizen participation rather than just voting every few years. Seoul's Innovation Bureau brings together government officials, researchers, and community representatives to co-create solutions to urban challenges. Financing these urban transformations requires creativity. Green bonds fund environmental infrastructure, while land value capture mechanisms help cities recoup some of the increased property values that result from public investments like new transit lines. Public-private partnerships, when carefully structured, can deliver projects that neither sector could accomplish alone. Meanwhile, redirecting existing spending, like road expansion budgets, towards sustainable alternatives often provides the most practical funding source. Urban transformation efforts increasingly recognize the unique context of each place rather than imposing standardized solutions. What works in Amsterdam may not suit Lagos or Lima. The most successful approaches combine global best practices with deep local knowledge, adapting strategies to specific geographic, cultural, and economic conditions. This place-based approach extends to aesthetics and cultural expression. The most beloved cities reflect their unique character rather than generic international style development. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated many urban trends already underway. Interest in outdoor spaces surged, leading cities to permanently convert street space to public use. Remote work reduced commuting for many office workers, prompting experiments with hybrid neighborhoods that blend residential, commercial, and workspace functions even more thoroughly than previous mixed-use developments. Meanwhile, the pandemic highlighted urban inequities, with disadvantaged communities suffering higher infection and mortality rates, reinforcing the importance of addressing social determinants of health through urban design. Looking ahead, cities face profound choices about their development patterns. Continuing business-as-usual approaches would lock in high-carbon, inequitable urban forms for decades. Alternatively, the comprehensive transformation outlined above could create cities that enhance human well-being while dramatically reducing environmental impacts. The urban decisions made in the next decade will largely determine whether global sustainability goals remain achievable, as infrastructure built today will shape resource consumption patterns for generations. What's clear is that cities are not just where problems manifest, they're where solutions emerge. Urban density, when thoughtfully designed, enables resource efficiency impossible in scattered development. Proximity fosters innovation through the exchange of ideas, and city governments often move more nimbly than national counterparts, implementing practical solutions while broader political systems remain gridlocked. The world's most progressive cities demonstrate that urban environments can be healthier, more equitable, and more sustainable while maintaining the vibrancy and opportunity that have always made cities engines of human progress. The innovations that make cities more livable connect directly to perhaps the most personal aspect of human well-being: our health. While urban design can significantly impact physical and mental health through factors like walkability and green space, the healthcare systems that diagnose, treat, and prevent disease are themselves undergoing profound transformation. These changes, driven by technological breakthroughs, evolving understanding of health determinants, and economic pressures, are reimagining healthcare delivery in ways that could make quality care more effective, accessible, and sustainable for communities worldwide. Have you ever wondered why, despite spending far more on healthcare than any other country, the United States doesn't achieve better health outcomes than nations spending half as much? Or why some breakthrough treatments benefit only a tiny fraction of patients who could potentially be helped? The answers involve complex interactions between technology, economics, human behavior, and social systems, exactly the kind of multifaceted challenges that require rethinking entire approaches rather than incremental tweaks. The COVID-19 pandemic dramatically accelerated healthcare innovation, particularly in digital health. Telehealth visits, which represented less than 1% of outpatient care before the pandemic, surged to more than 50% at the height of lockdowns and have stabilized at around 15 to 20% in many health systems. This shift proved that many routine consultations can be effectively handled remotely, saving time for both patients and providers while reducing infection risk. The best implementations integrate remote monitoring devices that transmit vital signs and other health data, allowing clinicians to track patients' conditions between virtual or in-person visits. Artificial intelligence applications in healthcare have progressed from research curiosities to practical tools used in everyday care. AI systems can now analyze medical images like X-rays, CT scans, and mammograms, often detecting subtle abnormalities that human radiologists might miss. In dermatology, algorithms can identify potential skin cancers from smartphone photos with accuracy comparable to board-certified dermatologists. These tools don't replace medical professionals, but extend their capabilities, allowing them to focus on complex cases and patient interaction rather than routine screening. Genomic medicine has moved from the research lab to clinical practice remarkably quickly. The first human genome sequencing took 13 years and cost approximately $3 billion, completed in 2003. Today, a person's entire genome can be sequenced in about a day for less than $1,000, with costs continuing to fall. This has enabled precision medicine approaches that tailor treatments to individual genetic profiles rather than treating all patients with the same condition identically. Cancer treatment exemplifies this precision approach. Oncologists increasingly use genetic analysis of tumor tissue to identify specific mutations driving cancer growth, then select targeted therapies that address those particular abnormalities. This contrasts sharply with traditional chemotherapy, which attacks all rapidly dividing cells regardless of whether they're cancerous. The results can be dramatic. Some patients with previously untreatable cancers achieve complete remission with minimal side effects. Similar approaches are emerging for rare diseases, mental health conditions, and even common conditions like heart disease and diabetes. Wearable health technologies have evolved from simple step counters to sophisticated devices that continuously monitor multiple physiological parameters. Advanced smartwatches can detect irregular heart rhythms, measure blood oxygen levels, and even perform simplified electrocardiograms. Continuous glucose monitors eliminate the need for diabetic patients to repeatedly prick their fingers for blood samples. These devices generate unprecedented amounts of real-world health data, creating both opportunities for better self-management and challenges in meaningful data interpretation. Robotics and advanced imaging are transforming surgery. Robotic surgical systems provide surgeons with enhanced precision and visualization, enabling complex procedures through smaller incisions. Augmented reality systems can overlay CT or MRI images onto a patient during surgery, helping surgeons navigate delicate anatomy. Meanwhile, minimally invasive approaches have expanded to procedures that once required major operations, reducing recovery time and complications. Perhaps most exciting is the emergence of regenerative medicine, approaches that repair or replace damaged tissues and organs rather than merely managing symptoms. Stem cell therapies can regenerate certain tissues, while 3D bioprinting aims to create functional organs from a patient's own cells, potentially eliminating transplant rejection and organ shortages. Gene editing technologies like CRISPR offer the potential to correct genetic defects that cause inherited diseases. While many of these approaches remain experimental, early clinical applications show promising results for conditions previously considered untreatable. Beyond these technological advances, healthcare delivery models are evolving to better address the full spectrum of health needs. The traditional reactive model, waiting until someone gets sick to provide care, is gradually shifting toward proactive approaches focused on maintaining wellness and addressing problems early. Value-based care arrangements, where providers are rewarded for keeping patients healthy rather than simply performing more procedures, create incentives aligned with better outcomes. Community health worker programs bridge gaps between clinical settings and everyday life, particularly in underserved areas. These trained laypeople from local communities help patients navigate health systems, adhere to treatment plans, and address social factors affecting health. Studies show these programs can significantly improve outcomes for chronic conditions while reducing costly emergency department visits and hospitalizations. Integration of behavioral health with primary care represents another important evolution. Mental health conditions frequently co-occur with physical health problems, each complicating the other. Collaborative care models that embed mental health professionals within primary care practices improve detection and treatment of conditions like depression and anxiety while reducing stigma associated with seeking mental health services. Digital therapeutics, evidence-based interventions delivered through software applications, are creating entirely new treatment options. These range from cognitive behavioral therapy programs for insomnia and anxiety to structured digital interventions for substance use disorders. When designed well and appropriately prescribed, these tools can expand access to behavioral treatments that have traditionally been limited by provider shortages. Healthcare is also increasingly addressing social determinants of health, the conditions in which people live, work, and age that profoundly impact health outcomes. Medical systems are implementing screening for factors like food insecurity, housing instability, and transportation challenges, then connecting patients with community resources to address these needs. Some health systems even invest directly in affordable housing or food access programs, recognizing that these interventions can improve health more effectively than additional medical services for certain populations. Despite these innovations, healthcare faces significant implementation challenges. New technologies and approaches typically reach advantaged populations first, potentially widening existing health disparities unless equity is explicitly prioritized. The rapid proliferation of digital health tools has created a fragmented landscape where patients must navigate multiple disconnected applications and devices. And while data sharing between different healthcare providers has improved, interoperability remains inadequate, leading to duplicated tests and missing information at critical care transitions. Cost pressures continue to drive healthcare reform globally. In high-income countries, aging populations and expensive new treatments create financial sustainability challenges for health systems. Middle-income countries working toward universal health coverage must balance expanding access with quality and financial protection. Low-income countries face the double burden of communicable diseases and rising rates of chronic conditions like diabetes and heart disease. The healthcare workforce itself requires transformation to implement these innovations effectively. Medical education increasingly emphasizes interdisciplinary teamwork, communication skills, and continuous learning rather than just technical knowledge. New roles like health coaches, patient navigators, and clinical informaticists complement traditional professions. Remote care models allow specialists to support primary care providers in underserved areas through virtual consultations, expanding expertise beyond major medical centers. The pandemic revealed both strengths and vulnerabilities in global health systems. Countries with strong primary care networks, robust public health infrastructure, and universal coverage generally weathered the crisis better than those with fragmented, inequitable systems. Meanwhile, the remarkable speed of COVID-19 vaccine development demonstrated the potential of focused scientific collaboration, while unequal global distribution highlighted persistent structural inequities in access to medical innovations. Looking forward, healthcare systems increasingly recognize the connections between human health and the health of natural systems. The concept of One Health acknowledges that human health is inseparable from animal health and environmental health. Climate change affects health through heat-related illness, changing infectious disease patterns, air quality impacts, and food system disruptions. Healthcare institutions themselves are working to reduce their environmental footprint, which currently accounts for about 4 to 5% of global carbon emissions. Patients' roles in healthcare continue to evolve from passive recipients to active partners. Shared decision-making approaches ensure treatment plans align with individual values and preferences. Patient-reported outcome measures capture the impacts that matter most to people, not just clinical indicators. Online communities allow patients with similar conditions to share experiences and insights, sometimes generating hypotheses that lead to formal research. Perhaps most fundamentally, healthcare is expanding beyond its traditional focus on treating disease to encompass broader well-being. This includes not just physical and mental health, but also social connectedness, sense of purpose, and ability to adapt to life's challenges. Forward-thinking healthcare organizations increasingly see their mission as helping communities thrive, not merely treating illness when it occurs. The future of healthcare will likely involve both high-tech and high-touch elements, sophisticated precision treatments, alongside renewed emphasis on fundamental human connections. The most successful approaches will leverage technology to enhance rather than replace the therapeutic relationships that remain at the core of effective healthcare. By combining cutting-edge innovation with enduring human values of compassion and care, healthcare systems can evolve to meet changing needs while fulfilling their essential mission of alleviating suffering and promoting well-being. The evolution of healthcare toward well-being and human connection mirrors similar transformations happening in another fundamental aspect of human life: how we work and learn. The institutions that structure our professional lives and educational journeys are undergoing perhaps their most significant reimagining since the Industrial Revolution. Digital technologies, changing demographics, and shifting cultural values are creating both profound challenges and extraordinary opportunities to rethink work and education for the 21st century. Have you ever wondered why we still organize many workplaces and schools according to models developed over a century ago? Or why, despite dramatic technological changes, many people still commute to offices to sit at desks for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? The COVID-19 pandemic forced millions to reconsider these questions practically overnight, accelerating workplace and educational transformations that had been gradually developing for years. Remote work represents the most visible of these shifts. Before the pandemic, approximately 5% of American workers worked primarily from home. During the height of lockdowns, that figure jumped to over 60% of professional workers. As restrictions eased, a new hybrid reality emerged. By 2023, surveys indicated that approximately 30 to 40% of workdays in professional sectors were being performed remotely. Companies that had insisted in-person work was essential for productivity and culture discovered that many functions could be performed effectively from anywhere with a good internet connection. This shift has profound implications beyond just where work happens. Geographic flexibility allows organizations to recruit talent regardless of location, while enabling workers to live in communities that align with their preferences and financial situations rather than being tethered to expensive urban centers. The environmental benefits are substantial. One study estimated that working from home just 2 days weekly reduces commuting-related carbon emissions by about 40% for those workers. However, remote work also raises concerns about isolation, career development, and the potential for creating two-tiered workforces divided between those who can work remotely and those whose jobs require physical presence. Automation and artificial intelligence are reshaping job content across virtually every industry. Contrary to some alarmist predictions, these technologies typically transform rather than eliminate entire occupations. Routine, predictable tasks are increasingly handled by machines, while distinctly human capabilities like creativity, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, and complex problem-solving become more valuable. A warehouse worker might spend less time walking between shelves and more time troubleshooting automated systems. A radiologist might review fewer routine scans but provide more nuanced interpretation of complex cases and direct communication with patients. This task transformation requires continuous skill development. The half-life of professional skills has shortened dramatically. Technical skills that once remained relevant for decades may now become obsolete within years or even months. This reality is driving significant changes in how education is structured and delivered. The traditional model of front-loading education in the first 2 decades of life followed by 40-plus years of work with minimal formal learning, has become increasingly unworkable. Lifelong learning has evolved from aspirational slogan to economic necessity. Forward-thinking employers now offer continuous learning opportunities through internal academies, tuition assistance, and dedicated learning time. Online platforms like Coursera, edX, and LinkedIn Learning provide flexible access to courses ranging from technical skills to management training. Coding boot camps and similar intensive programs offer accelerated paths to specific careers without requiring multi-year degree programs. Educational institutions themselves are adapting to this new reality. Many universities now offer stackable credentials, shorter, targeted educational experiences that can either stand alone or combine toward traditional degrees. Competency-based programs assess what students can actually do rather than how much time they've spent in classrooms. Industry-academic partnerships create curriculum aligned with current workforce needs, sometimes with guaranteed interviews or hiring pathways upon completion. The rise of the gig economy represents another fundamental shift in work arrangements. Approximately 36% of American workers now participate in the gig economy, either as their primary income source or supplemental to traditional employment. Digital platforms connect workers with specific tasks or projects, from ride-sharing and delivery to graphic design and software development. This model offers flexibility and autonomy, but typically without traditional employment benefits like health insurance, paid leave, or retirement plans. Project-based work structures are increasingly common even within traditional organizations. Rather than static departments with fixed responsibilities, more companies organize around cross-functional teams that form to address specific challenges, then dissolve and reconfigure as needs change. This approach can increase innovation and adaptability, but requires workers to continuously build new relationships and demonstrate value in changing contexts. These shifts coincide with changing attitudes toward work itself. Younger generations increasingly prioritize meaning and purpose alongside traditional concerns like compensation and stability. The concept of bringing your whole self to work reflects expectations for authenticity and values alignment rather than rigid separation between professional and personal identities. Companies respond with stronger mission orientation, sustainability commitments, and diversity and inclusion initiatives that reflect these changing expectations. Physical workspaces are evolving to support these new work patterns. The pandemic dramatically accelerated the shift away from assigned desks toward activity-based workspaces designed for specific types of work. Collaboration areas, quiet focus zones, social spaces, and meeting rooms equipped for hybrid interactions. Office footprints often shrink while quality improves, with more emphasis on creating compelling environments that draw people together for meaningful interaction rather than simply housing individual workstations. Early childhood education has gained recognition as both crucial for individual development and essential economic infrastructure. Research consistently shows that high-quality early learning experiences significantly impact cognitive development, social skills, and even adult health outcomes. Countries with strong universal preschool programs, like Finland and South Korea, demonstrate both educational and economic benefits from these investments. In the United States, universal pre-kindergarten has expanded significantly at the local and state level, though national implementation remains incomplete. K-12 education faces pressure to move beyond standardized testing toward deeper learning models that develop critical thinking, collaboration, and adaptability. Project-based learning approaches engage students in complex, real-world challenges rather than isolated subjects. social-emotional learning programs explicitly develop self-awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making alongside academic content. Digital tools increasingly enable personalized learning paths that adapt to each student's needs, though the most effective implementations carefully balance technology with human relationships and guidance. Higher education confronts perhaps the most fundamental questions about its purpose and structure. With content freely available online and employers increasingly focusing on demonstrated skills rather than credentials alone, colleges and universities must articulate their unique value proposition. Some institutions double down on the residential experience and community building that cannot be replicated virtually. Others embrace hybrid models that combine online flexibility with periodic intensive in-person experiences. Community colleges expand workforce partnerships to create direct pathways to in-demand careers, while elite universities explore how to extend access to their resources beyond traditional degree-seeking students. These educational and workplace transformations involve significant economic implications and transition challenges. Labor market polarization, the simultaneous growth of high-skill, high-wage jobs and low-skill, low-wage jobs while middle-skill positions decline, threatens to widen inequality without deliberate intervention. Workers in declining industries often face geographic, skill, and identity barriers to transitioning to growth sectors. The rapid pace of change can leave even well-intentioned education and training systems perpetually playing catch-up to labor market demands. Policy responses to these challenges vary widely across different countries and political contexts. Some emphasize strengthening traditional safety net programs like unemployment insurance and worker protections. Others explore more fundamental reforms like universal basic income, portable benefits attached to individuals rather than employers, or personal learning accounts that provide resources for periodic skill development throughout working life. Workforce development programs increasingly focus on regional coordination between employers, educational institutions, and community organizations to create coherent career pathways rather than isolated training programs. Amid these structural changes, the fundamental human dimensions of work and learning remain constant. People seek not just material provision, but also purpose, growth, connection, and recognition through their work. Educational experiences shape not just knowledge and skills, but identity and relationships. The most successful innovations in these domains recognize these deeper human needs rather than focusing exclusively on efficiency or technological possibility. The future of work and education will likely be characterized by diversity rather than any single dominant model. Some roles will remain largely place-based, while others become fully distributed. Some career paths will still involve traditional credentials and linear progression, while others feature portfolio careers combining multiple income streams and continuous reinvention. Educational journeys will range from intensive residential experiences to self-directed online learning to apprenticeship models that integrate work and learning from the beginning. What seems certain is that adaptability at both individual and institutional levels will be the defining skill of this era. The capacity to continuously learn, unlearn, and relearn, to build relationships across differences, to navigate ambiguity and complexity, and to find meaning amid constant change will distinguish those who thrive in this evolving landscape. By developing these capacities in ourselves and our institutions, we can shape a future of work and learning that enhances human flourishing rather than simply responding to technological imperatives. The convergence of healthcare transformation with changes in work and education reveals a broader pattern of institutional reinvention happening across virtually every sector of society. These interconnected shifts present extraordinary opportunities to create systems better aligned with human needs, environmental boundaries, and technological possibilities. By approaching these transitions with both clear-eyed realism about their challenges and genuine optimism about their potential, we can navigate one of history's most significant periods of social reorganization toward outcomes that expand rather than diminish human potential.